Did anybody come? Is everybody sleeping already? Okay, so I think all of you know me. My name is Maria Carolina. I am the president of the Greater Miami chapter of the Institute of Industrial and Systems Engineers. I thank each and every one of you for being here. I hope that you don't think at the end of the night that this was a waste of time. You think that it was a very good learning opportunity for all of you. I want to share with all of you that we recently got our chapter certificate. So we are an official Institute of Industrial Systems Engineers chapter after 14 years. My predecessor here can secure that. Thank you. And thanks to each and every one of my team members, as well as the previous speakers and the current speakers for helping me make this happen. Because, yeah, I do have the want to do it, but it's so much work, I can't do it by myself. So it starts with a vision, it starts with one thing, but it definitely takes an awesome team to make it happen. So thanks to my team for helping me put this back together. And now, let me introduce to you our speakers for the night, who is Marcos.
Yeah, I guess we're missing one. But
Yeah. I don't know where the other one is.
You got him by surprise, huh?
Maria, maybe we could go around and each introduce ourselves at the end.
Sounds like a wonderful idea. You want to start? No, you want to start.
All right.
Where you work.
Hi, my name is Eduardo Lobo, and I am a graduate student for FIU right now in the engineering management program. I currently work at ARIA Construction and Design, and I'm a project manager.
All right. My name is David Cortez. I'm also an industrial engineer from the University of Miami, and I'm working in Mount Sinai Medical Center.
My name is Gustavo Villas. I graduated here on my Master of Industrial Engineering in 2003. That was a long time ago. I specialize in supply chain management on the electronic company.
Hi, my name is Arnold Arguello. I am also a former alum from FIU. I did my Master's in Engineering Management, graduated in 2007. Shorter than you.
Around it.
And I came back for seconds in finance and did it in 2010. So I'm actually not working. I'm in the market, but I thought that this chat would be an opportunity to regain my knowledge in whatever I learned in supply chain and analytics. So it's a good opportunity to be here. Thank you.
My name is Emilce Gil. I am currently a student in the logistics engineering program. I am currently working in the Department of Engineering Management here at FIU with Dr. Sisi and Dr. Schwal. And I am an industrial engineer from, I gained that bachelor's back in the Dominican Republic. And it's pretty much about myself.
All right, I'm Hugo Cordova, actually a proud member of the Greater Miami chapter. So glad to be back. My background is in engineering as well as engineering, master's and bachelor's. Graduated many years ago. I'm currently a project manager for Brightstar. We call it the brother and sister of Costco in Latin America.
I'm Genesis. I'm alumni from here. Got my master's in engineering management and currently a process engineer for Curtis.
I'm Ivy Souza. I graduated with my bachelor's at University of Campinas, Brazil. I'm okay because you didn't. I did my master's here at FIU in engineering management, and I'm currently working
professor here in the engineering management program. I spent most of my career in the aerospace industry, mainly GE aircraft engines, and enjoyed bringing my industry experience to the classroom.
Awesome.
My name is Johnny Arrieta, industrial engineer. I have a master in engineering management from Washington State. So I'm really passionate about supply chain management. That's my hobby.
That's the first time I see.
He likes to differentiate himself.
Good evening. My name is Orlando Duran. This is my second time at these meetings. I am an ERP consultant, and one of the offerings that I have is supply chain implementations and ERP project management. I implement ERP systems like Infor, SAP, Oracle, those kind of things.
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me here tonight. I'm invited by Luis, and we know each other for a while already. Given the supply chain certification that I've been teaching here for the past 8 years, more or less, like 3 times a year, 2 times a year, we do that. It's a week-long certificate that we do here in the engineering department, and he is part of the company that hires me to do the certification. Yeah? And he thought it would be an interesting idea to share some of the information that we have in that certification. So basically, what you're going to see tonight is an extract from that. There's one coming now in November. So you know, if you become a little more interested and would like to go a little deeper on the subject, that's an opportunity. And if you know anybody on your companies that could benefit from it as well. Again, it's a 20-hour certification. It goes from Monday to Friday, from 6 to 10. We like to think that it's an entertaining certification because along with the course, we divide the students in groups, and they start creating their supply chain based on what they see and they learn. They start creating it, and then we do a Shark Tank exercise in the end where they present their supply chains, and we pick a winner, and then we have the test and everything else. I think it's an interesting exercise that we do. So we have one coming now on November 18th to 22nd, and you're more than welcome to participate. A little bit about Marcos, Brazilian, as I know I was given away already. So out of the, you know, on the professional experience side, until there he is. I don't feel so alone anymore. He's back. You missed your chance. You're gonna have to wait. So until standard to make a supply chain work. So we're gonna talk about planning and then analytics, because it has become a big thing today. We have so much access to data, and to transform that in information, useful information, you will need science, you will need tools, and that's where one thing complements the other. We will talk about a management tool called Sales and Operations Planning, but without good data, without good information, you don't get anywhere. Yeah. So those things work together. You have my email and phone number there in case you wanna, you know, talk about it and discuss other things. That's pretty much myself. You know, I'm a writer as well, and that's my hobby, not supply chain. I have 2 books published, Flowers on the Balcony and Bread and Joy. These books are available at Amazon, and mainly I like to call them inspirational writing. The idea is to offer tools or ideas to become a better person, either in your family or in your community, in your life in general. Yeah? So that's me. we will start today by the end. This is pretty much the last slide that I share in the certification, because what we do is we kind of work on building blocks. We talk about each of the subjects in different moments in the certification until we kind of put everything together and say, when you're managing all these aspects of supply chain, you're doing supply chain management, which is the objective of the course. And the idea today is to focus on the strategy, how this strategy is brought down to planning, and how this planning affects the execution. Okay? Again, just to give a complete picture, you have the corporate strategy. You have to align your supply chain strategy to that corporate strategy, otherwise you're going to a different direction. Then you bring that to product design, demand planning, we're going to cover this today, product planning, and once you have done the planning well done, production planning, sorry, then you come down to execution with procurement, inventory management, warehouse management, production, distribution and transportation, imports, exports, goods, logistics. We cover all that in that 20-hour certification I mentioned to you. So let's try to define together supply chain. When we talk about supply chain, what comes to mind? How do you define that?
The process of providing goods.
Process of providing goods. Is it that simple?
Well,
I like that.
in general.
Yeah, but let's dig in a little more.
Process of moving goods.
Moving goods, providing goods, we're going to the right direction here. What else?
Storing them.
Storing them. What else?
The whole life cycle of a good, from production to end consumer.
Yeah, production to end consumer. Does it start really in production?
No, in planning.
Raw material.
Raw material, so you start going back, right? It's a very broad concept because it goes from one end to the other, from the most raw material all the way to the final product and back, and back. So let's see a definition here and see what pops to our eyes. A global network used to deliver products and services, from raw material to end customers through an engineered flow of information, physical distribution, and cash. What gets your attention in that definition?
The last part, information, physical distribution, and cash.
Ah, the three flows. So we spoke about materials moving, but there's more. You're also moving cash from side to side, you're moving information from side to side. What about your attention?
I like the cash part.
The cash part. How do you get to that cash, right? First you have to make the product get to where it should go. What else? What gets your
I
attention?
think it's interesting that they put the word global in there because you can look at it in different perspectives.
Yeah. Yeah, it has become global, right? You don't sell stuff to the corner anymore. You sell to the other side of the world. You don't bring stuff from the corner anymore. You bring from China. So, it has become a global network, right? How about the network word? What does it tell you?
Linked processes.
Huh?
Linked processes.
Linked processes, connections, right? It's a network of suppliers and customers and service providers in general, okay? So just for us to get an idea of how to define this thing. And as we said, it's from raw material to end customers. How about this? You guys are engineers. Nobody said anything about this word. How? Why? What's the word engineer doing there?
Providing
Those things that an engineer do, does it happen by chance? You actually elaborate on them, right? You think about them, right? So that's why it's an engineer flow. You think about where you're going to have warehouses, where you're going to have a factory, how far you're distributing, how long it takes for transporting them, how long you should keep inventory. All those things are engineered. They are not happening by chance if you want to succeed. Okay? Very good. So we spoke about the entities, right? You need a supplier, you need a producer, and you need a customer. If you have those three, you have a mini supply chain, right? And the flows, you have product going, you have cash coming, and you have information going back and forth. if you want to manage supply chain, that information needs to be going back and forth. You can't work in isolation. Yeah? But they're not that simple, are they? When you look at it, you will see a bunch of suppliers, or suppliers of your suppliers, and you're going to have government as their supplier, you're going to have service providers, you're going to have factories. So there's, you know, a diversity of suppliers on a supply chain. And on your channels, you're going to have your own distribution centers. You're going to have distributors distributing on your behalf. Yeah? You're going to have many different types of stores. You could have your own store. You could go direct to consumer, right? And you could have resellers of your product. So each of those channels will have a different treatment. Okay? Okay, so we kind of define supply chain here. How do we manage that thing? How do we define supply chain management? How do I manage this beast? Silence. Mystery.
Just say silence when I said hello.
My silence was bigger than yours.
Oh, is this a competition?
How do we manage this thing?
Put systems in place.
Systems in place. Why?
So that they can be, you have the understanding of the relationships and what happens in both. And it's not always computerized systems,
Right.
usually.
But how do you get that understanding? You get information, right? Remember one of the 3 flows? So one of the best ways to actually manage that flow is to have good systems. And systems today that talk to other systems, right? They interact through portals, to whatever tools that you can use to interact with your customers, right? Blockchain is now the latest fashion, right? But it's nothing but a system that talks to other systems and, you know, integrate information. So what else? Only systems?
Well, data through systems, data management.
Data management, people, right? Processes, all those things. So again, design, again, is not by chance. You're designing it. Planning, we're going to cover more today. Execution, control, and monitoring of supply chain activities with the objective of creating value. In the end, what you're trying to do is create value to your organization, to the, what is the word again? Stakeholders. Yeah? Because many people are being affected by that supply chain. And you want to leverage worldwide logistics. Again, the world or global concept. Okay? Synchronizing supply with demand. What does that mean? Sounds beautiful, right? What does it mean? Synchronizing supply with demand. Think, McFly, think. What is it? What am I trying to do here?
The optimal point is where the two intersect, because if one of them is greater, then you're going to have either leftover or shortage.
That is the concept right there, right? If I have too many, I have a problem. If I have too few, I have another problem. And they will all have different ramifications. So in the end, the art and science of supply chain, you that have as a hobby, right, is to balance supply and demand. So you have what you need, okay? And measuring performance globally. So again, it's designed, it's executed, but you have to monitor and measure to make sure that you're delivering what you planned in the beginning. Yeah? Very good. So now that we spoke about supply chain, we spoke about all those boxes that we had there. If you were to simply divide a whole supply chain in 5 boxes, what would these boxes be?
Supplier, customer.
Supply. What else?
Customers.
Customers. What else? No. We're talking about process, not the end result.
Outcomes, inputs.
The producer.
The producer. So we have the supply, we have the customer, we have the producer. What else?
Distributor.
The distributor is one of the channels. Yeah? So it's, and we have the plan. Okay? So we spoke about the supply. we spoke about the production, we spoke about the distribution or the channels, we spoke about planning. There's one missing. After the customer, what happens? You didn't like the product. There you go. You got to return that thing. It's a big process in supply chain too. So the 5 ones are plan, source, make, deliver, return. Okay, this entity here called SCORE has tools to manage all these 5, and they have created a 6 called Enable, which is all the compliance, procedures, all the paperwork, the bureaucratic side of it. But those 5 are the main processes. Yeah. So we're going to focus on planning today. Yeah. So the art here is to balance resources with your requirements. Remember, you design a supply chain. When you design that, when you put that thing on paper, you start understanding that you have some requirements, some needs, yeah, to fulfill. So you have to balance the resources with those requirements. You define ongoing planning process. What does that mean? I can't plan just once. I have to have an ongoing planning process, and that's what we're going to show here today. Establish and communicate plans for the whole supply chain. So when I have a long-term plan, or I have a few months plan, does that affect my suppliers?
Yes.
How?
You need to provide information if you will, correct supply chain in place so they know they have the raw material necessary to produce.
There you go. Right? I'm planning a ramp up of 100% in a year. Does that affect my supplier? Of course it does. If he's not ready, I'll fail. So I need to inform them. Yeah? And my distributors, hey, I'm coming with a strong promotion here. We have to fill the channels. Get ready. This is coming. Yeah? So I have to share that information. Plan execution of source, make, deliver, and return. Those other 4 processes. Plan inventory, capital assets, and transportation. Now we're saying, okay, that plan, that design that I made will affect me in many ways. How much inventory do I need to fulfill that 100% growth? How much money do I need? Do I need to invest in a new warehouse? There are many ramifications. Okay, do I need more transportation providers? Yeah? And align supply chain with the financial plan. Remember that we spoke in the beginning that you have a strategic plan for the company? That involves dollar signs. How much money you want to make, right? So you have to align your plan to that plan. Okay? So the strategy, the word strategic has an aura that makes, everything become viable, or, losing money business become doable. So strategy of the company justify many things. Okay? And if you have a good strategy, you will probably succeed. If you have a bad strategy, most likely you're going to fail. And in a corporate strategy, supply chain alignment is a key success factor. What does that mean? If you have a beautiful strategy, but your supply chain is not aligned to that, most likely that strategy is not going to fulfill its promises. Yeah? A corporate strategy needs to specify how you will satisfy your customers. It will work to grow, how you're going to work to grow the business, how I'm going to grow the business. Yeah? How you're going to compete in that market or any given market, because it's going to be different from market to market. How you're going to manage the organization, and how you're going to develop new capabilities to deliver that, and how to achieve the financial objectives. So I have highlighted some of them that all affect your planning. They all will affect your planning in one way or another. So one of the things that you have to define is, what kind of network do I need? When I say network, is where will I have factories? Where will I have warehouses, distribution centers? Yeah? Where will I have offices, sales offices? All right? All that affects the supply chain. So each decision regarding number, size, location, location of facilities, because you might have warehouses just for reverse, just for dealing with returns. Yeah? Transportation mode and providers, technology to be used to connect them should be made taking into consideration the potential impacts to the whole supply chain. So, meaning, if I have a distribution center here instead of having in Seattle, will that affect me? Yes, because I'm going to have different transportation requirements when I do that. Okay? So my decisions about inventory. The design network must have the right levels of inventory. It doesn't matter if I have 10 warehouses. If I don't have this inventory well planned and well distributed, I will have lack of product to my customers. Okay? Ideally, raw material components and finished goods are always working. If I have inventory resting for too long somewhere, something is not working. Something is not going well. So when I design that, I have to have in consideration that my inventory should be always moving. The challenge is to address uncertainty, keeping inventory levels as low and as accurate as possible. So, as it was said, having the right inventory at the right place at the right time. That's the whole science behind it. So, forecasting and inventory planning. One thing affects the other directly. So, when well aligned and executed, it could generate both savings and revenue. So how do you generate savings? You optimize inventory levels in every step of the chain, and you generate revenue assuring availability. So when you have the right product at the right time, it means that you have the right product at the point of sale. So when you walk in and you want to buy it, there it is. Right? When you don't have the right product at the right place, you walk into the store, you don't find it, you lost the sale right there. Yeah?
And you made a customer angry.
Yeah, and most likely he's going to buy from the competition, and you could actually not lose on one sale. You could lose the customer. Yeah? So let's explore a little bit demand planning. Demand planning is the process of planning all demands in the long term. So remember that corporate plan, yeah, the supply chain plan, is a long-term thing. You're not planning just a few weeks or even a few months. You're looking ahead in a long time. Yeah. So demand is the need for a product, component, or service that could come from customer, another plant, another warehouse. So you have to calculate the whole demand for that product. So you have to answer how many of your product or service customers will buy, for what price, when, and where. So that's a very engineering-like exercise, right? It's not a simple exercise. And the dilemma is, if I produce much more than my demand, I'm going to have financial losses. I'm going to have product that nobody's buying. Yeah? And on the other side, if I underbuild, right, and I have not enough, I'm going to have, I'm going to lose the sale, I'm going to lose the customer, as we were saying. So, the components of the demand. First, the trend. How is it evolving through time? Okay? You have products that are going up, you have products that are going down. You're going to invest in some, divest in others. So you have to look at the trend. Not only of the product, but your company, the industry. This is an industry that is growing. Is it worth investing more in that industry? Okay? Seasonality. How does that work? Do I have better months than others? Seasonality is only through the year, right? Is it? No. Give me another example that is not only through the year.
A week, month.
Give me an example of a week. A week seasonality.
Weekends versus the rest of the week.
There you go. Right? I go to a restaurant, I go to a shopping mall, they have different patterns. Right? What about during the day? Can I have actually a seasonality during the day? Yes. Yeah. Give me an example. Lunchtime is only possible if you have collaboration and you have visibility and you have shared information among the last mile of the supply chain. So what you're doing here is you're trying to predict the demand in the next 90 days. Why is it 90 days? Because forecasting is more transactional. You're actually forecasting what is going to be consumed, how much you're going to produce, right? You're not talking about here, do I need a bigger factory? Do I need more warehouses? No, you're talking about how much I'm going to do next week, how much I'm going to do next month, how much I need from my suppliers, how much product do I need in that warehouse, okay? So, first principle is that forecasts are always wrong. Don't believe that you're going to get it right every time. You're not going to get it right ever. There will always be a mistake. And you have to take that mistake into consideration in your forecast. Why? Because you need to have a little buffer there. You will be wrong. And you have to have the kind of, the called supply chain flexibility, right? Because if you over forecast, you need to have the speed to promote and get out of it. And you have to notice it immediately. Okay? Now, if you have under forecast, you need to have your suppliers ready to respond when you need more product. Okay, so that mistake needs to be taken into consideration all the time. Forecast should always include an estimate of error, and forecasts are more accurate on groups of products. So you will see frequently that they are forecasting a group of products, and if you can delay the customization or the definition of color and this kind of thing at the end, better. So whatever is common, you can be more accurate on your purchases, on your production. So there are many approaches to forecast. The one that I advocate as being the best is meeting, yeah? But it becomes more feasible, and it requires creating a sense of mutual trust. And that is the input for the sales and operations plan. So this is where I wanted to get. So this is a methodology that we will see in 3 slides, but it's a very complex methodology because it aligns the business plan with the execution. It's what you have in the middle, yeah? That long-term plan, which is the 3 to 5 years plan, right, is what project revenues, profits, and it becomes your point of reference for the long-term planning. The S&OP is something that projects in detail your products and where it's going to be manufactured, how much is going to be bought for the next year, year and a half. Some industries go even farther because of the time that it takes to produce, like a ship. It takes a very long time. And then you land that with that forecast for 3 months on a more transactional level. Okay? So when you have that kind of methodology, you break silos because it requires the sales organization, the operational organization, and the finance organization to be on the same page. They have to sit in a table like this and they have to discuss it. Okay? And you're going to see how. It ties major functions. You need an executive level agreement, so it's not management level, it's a VP level. This is where they actually agree on what's going to be done for the next year and a half, every month. It's a link between business and the tactical plans, and it's a monthly replanning. So what each side of the organization bring? The sales and marketing team, they will bring the sales forecast by product families, the strategy to achieve business plan, the market analysis, and the calendar of product launches. Why is the calendar important of product launches and phase outs? Why does that affect the supply chain?
Because you have to plan ahead at what time those products are going to be ready for those specific times to be able to be sold.
Let's talk about that first, okay? I'm launching a new product. Why do I need to tell the whole supply chain that I'm launching that new product? Because I need to plan capacity, production. Sometimes I need new machinery to produce a new product, right? I need to involve my suppliers to make sure that I have the raw material to produce it, yeah? Now, on the other side, I'm phasing a product out. What do I have to do? I'm phasing a product out, okay? This product will no longer be produced. I'm phasing it out. No more. What do I have to do?
Deplete inventory.
Yeah.
I have to deplete inventory. I have to communicate to my suppliers that I'm no longer buying this, right? These parts. I have to communicate with my channels, telling them, listen, this is gone. Don't order more. Okay? Don't plan demand for more, because I am phasing it out. So you have to kind of spread the word around. On the operations or production side, the execution side, they have to project manufacturing output per product family. They have to plan inventory levels to answer to that sales forecast, right? How much resources do I need? Do I need more capacity? Do I need more planning, more production capacity, more warehouse space, more transportation capacity? So it's a capacity adjustment in a macro level. And production strategy and decisions where I'm going to produce, if I'm going to make to stock, if I'm going to make to order. So all the planning, the production planning is brought to the table as well. It needs to be aligned with the sales and marketing plan. Okay? So this is how it works. First, let's call it the first week of the month. You have the product review. So all people in marketing, engineering, they will come to you and say, this is my plan for the products. These are the products that I'm phasing out. These are the products that I'm launching. Okay? And they have a calendar. Very good. So the sales team come and produce their unconstrained forecast. What is an unconstrained forecast? What does the word unconstrained suggest?
That's something you can build anything.
Huh?
You can build everything.
You can build everything. That's what it is. That's my wish list. If I had all the supply in the world, this is what I would sell.
Yes.
Okay? That's an unconstrained demand. Now comes the pain in the butt guys and say, no, you can't. We don't have capacity. My suppliers don't have enough. I don't have transportation capacity, da-da-da-da-da. And it's going to take 6 months to adjust. Okay? But if you do that every month, you will be adjusting in time. Okay? If you are reviewing that every month, you should be okay. Then, now they come with the constrained demand. And they go to finance and say, this is what we're going to be building, and this is what we're going to be selling. How aligned is it with the finance plan? How far is it from it? It could be close, it could be far, and that will require some management adjustment. So the last step of this cycle is where the VPs sit on the table and say, this is our plan for the next few months. This is how it looks compared to the budget, compared to whatever, and things that we need to do, either to improve or to change or to adjust. Yeah? Companies that do this on a monthly basis, typically they phase out the budget process. Because this is pretty much what you're doing on an ongoing basis. Right? If you're doing this right, you don't need that budget process that starts in September, October, November, in some companies, in January and others. And because you already have that plan done ahead. Okay? But you can't do this without good information, without good data. And this is why I get my rest, and I get this guy to start talking about the data. How is
Thank you so much. That was too exciting. I was like, let him just go. Yes. So mine is not as exciting. I haven't written any books or anything, but there you go. So that's my journey. Came to the US long time ago. I went to Clemson, got my master's in industrial engineering. Before that, I have my bachelor's in chemical engineering from India. And then I worked for a couple of years till I was like, yeah, I need a break. I need to do something different. So one of the things is just working, even though the word supply chain wasn't, legalized, I would say, but then things that we did was pretty much supply chain. You talk about anything, right? Whether it was distribution planning, enterprise resource planning, any of the classic IE terminologies that you guys think about. We all used to do that. It just was called something different. So I remember once upon a time I used to work as a sales and operations technologist. Basically, it was the same thing. So I worked for a company called Asian Paints, which had collaborated with PPG America, which is Pittsburgh Pot Glass. They make paints. So I used to be in charge of the automotive paints for Daewoo Motors, Honda cars, and New Holland tractors. So it's different, where you get a flavor of different cultures. You have the Korean culture, you have the European culture, and the Japanese culture. And let me tell you, big difference. So it just gives you an idea, like Marcus said, the world is flat. It's not about silos. It's not about the mom and pop stores who's talking about their producers and everything. We're talking about competition. We're talking about digitization. We're talking about all those things that you think about: blockchain, cold chain, cryptocurrencies, all those jazz that people talk about right now. So anyway, so I came to, so that was one of the reasons that made me want to think about industrial engineering. And I came to Clemson, got my master's in industrial engineering and specialized in supply chain. And then after that, I was like, yeah, I understand the nuts and bolts of engineering. I understand the EOQs and I understand classic IEs. I understand operational research, but I don't understand what the business wants. How do I link what I learned to the P&Ls? How does that relate to finance, accounting, economics, all those things? So that was one of the reasons I was like, okay, fine, let me do my MBA. But when I think about it, I was talking to Hugo, so when I think about you have your engineering and you have your business, and I feel there is a bridge that connects both, which is information systems. As in, if you don't understand information systems, you don't understand how information or data flows, you're not going to make sense out of it because you understand the accounting, but unless you understand how things that you impact in your day-to-day jobs using classic IE or industrial engineering, how is that going to impact your bottom line or your top line? It's not going to make a difference. So I was the only guy probably in my university who majored with an MBA with MIS. So you gotta be different, you gotta do what you like, right? So from South Carolina, the son was in Philadelphia, so I stayed in Philadelphia for a while. And then I joined a company called SCA Technologies in Pittsburgh. So SCA Technologies was a boutique consulting firm that had started out of McDonald's. And what they were doing is optimizing the networks or designing the networks for McDonald's all over the world using activity-based cost. So it is like one of the things where you actually start siloing or you break down your processes and you understand the cost of each and you try to see which one is, how do you route it or how do you optimize it. So I did it for a while. After that, then I moved to a company called Appian, which was in Atlanta, Georgia. So that was a different role. It was more about Appian. They had their own suite of products. So they had ERPs, they had WMS, they had TMS, and they had a suite of supply chain products, which was demand planning, replenishment planning, inventory planning, advanced planning and scheduling, ABC analysis. So I joined them as a senior consultant and a project manager. So I used to be in charge of like going to clients and understanding what their problems were and how we could solve them using our tools. So again, consulting, which means Monday to Friday, you're traveling anywhere in the US, Canada, Europe, wherever life takes you. After that, I joined a company called Chainalytics, again based out of Atlanta. When you think about Chainalytics, they call it analytics on steroids. So it's like, you're thinking about the big ones. You're talking about the Apples and the Sonys and the Subways. And so like one of my projects was actually designing a network for Apple. So it's awesome. And then that's supply chain design, supply chain network, analytics. It's just my passion. It's so interesting. It's really hard to describe that in words, because when you think about a single item, you don't know what goes to manufacture that product or to get it to your hands when you walk in the store. Because if it's not there in the right design or the color or what are you looking for, you lost a sale. So how do you make sure? And then when you have the ability to actually go 30,000 foot above or 50,000 foot, and then you look at the supply chain, you might have something that is being done in Africa or East Asia or India or Bangladesh, and then it has to come down to a different place, get processed, it has to come to a different place, and it has to travel back to a different place, and it has to be in the store to your specifications when you enter it. And imagine thinking about all that. It's not even about, trying to be more proactive versus reactive. Again, this was a reactive example, which happens in like most of the time. There's a lot of firefighting that we have to do day by day. But how do we get that mentality to be more proactive versus reactive? How do we think about the future right now, like geopolitical? Or just understanding what might be happening that we can think about so that we have those scenarios planned and try to learn it. Like everything, it doesn't happen overnight. To Marcus's point, it's all about starting with a sponsor. It's all about the leadership, making sure that otherwise you would be doing things no one cares. Unless, one of the things I always enforce with my team is, if you don't understand how you are impacting decisions or influencing decisions or driving actions, then you got to question why are we doing it. Because if you're not, there's not a thesis or a science project that you can take, or a doctorate, right, that you can take your time and do it, because things change, we need to make sure, again. So that's one of the things, how do we make sure that we understand what the business priority is? And then the biggest bottleneck, like everything, data. Like collecting data, and you have all these disparate systems in your company, and you'll be lucky if they talk to each other.
Yes. I was going to ask you that. How do you challenge that filtering of information data? Because sometimes when you, especially when you provide service or represent services to big companies, you think that, oh, they have it all. I just have to go there and just scratch it, And when you go there, they don't even know if they have it. And sometimes they tell you they have all these RP, WMS, all that. But do you use it? I don't know.
There's no orientation for that. They're too busy executing, and they're not oriented to generate the data.
So what happens is sometimes when you ask for a report, they give you a report and you start reading it and you go like, what is it? So you start asking, and then that's when you see that, oh no, well, the guy didn't put it there, by the hour or every 2 months or whatever he remembers. And then you have to start like filtering and start, getting processes, getting your sponsor to see we need to change this, etc., etc. And as I've been hearing you, it's very funny because I remember every time that I'm trying to get out into this, and then it's a hard way. So usually when you have, and especially on your side, I guess the more money that they put on it, it's easier for you to get all this information.
No.
But no, sorry. What I mean is, meaning with tools, I don't know that, or sometimes, the customer, sometimes they want everything and they want to be precise. And then when you're, okay, we can do this tool, we can do this mapping. No, I don't. I don't want to pay that. So they have the entire Ferrari, but they just have for a Toyota Corolla. So you get into the middle of what do I do now?
As in, one of the things I always face as a consultant was that, right? When you go to your clients and you ask for data, and it was interesting because they had some plants in some other countries, which they didn't even have a system. They had paper, PDF copies, and they were like, there you go. It's like, what are you going to do with that? You ask for data. That's what you do. So one of the things they used to say is, most of the time people getting consultants so that they can clean their crap up, right?
That is true.
But having said that, a lot of times what you can do is make assumptions. Because it's like, the exception. If you want to spend 80% of your time for 20% of the exceptions, or you're going to take the 80%, make some assumptions more. So that's always a thing that you have to make a decision on. But trust me, if data was clean, then
no, and that's the reason that I asked you, because usually never is.
Never is.
And always, like for example, lately I've been trying to research what is the scales for from this transaction to this transaction you can use Excel, from this transaction or from this kind of environment you can use, I don't know, Tableau, Python, and then you move to something else, because sometimes when we talk about this data analysis and the prescription, prescription and all that is, we think it's like some type of this science fiction robot somewhere and he's thinking about that. No, and sometimes somebody just doing analysis and doing the programming to do the simulation of those analyses. So sometimes you don't, and sometimes depending on the company, sometimes some of them are willing to go all the way and give you a proper tool for all that. So you hire the proper, programmers and all that, and sometimes they go, no, let's do whatever we can. So you go with Excel, SQL, or whatever you have available.
Yeah. As in, it's simple, right? To me, like my previous teams used to hate this part of my team. Like, I would be like, as long as you get the work done, I really don't care about if you use Python or Anaconda or Cobra, right? To me, it's, as long as you show me the results, I'm good with that. But the sad part is, I actually can understand those things, so I know if they're calling bluff, right? So if they're saying, oh, it's going to take 5 days, I'm like, I can't do that in 2 days. What are you talking about, right? But the approach that you can do is create templates. So when you're going to a client or something, give them templates that they have to populate and give it back versus they giving data dumps. Right? It's always a game of tennis, right? The ball is in whose court. But it was interesting because as a consultant you could do that, but when you work in industry, now you're working with your own company data and you're like, now what? Right? And
How do you call the consultant?
Sometimes they go like that.
Yeah.
They hire a consultant to tell you something that
you already know, and you spend like millions of dollars for that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think data is always one of the biggest things because especially when you have, when we talk about aligning demand and supply, right? The demand people, the people who are working with the demand and the forecast, they would look at the reports and some different aggregations that only they know. And then when you talk about the suppliers, they are talking about like something that they know, and there is no mapping tool between that. So, like, we used to get data, and it's like, okay, now how do we make sense of this? And then to add to that, you have the flow, and you have the cost. The cost, the finance people are a whole different story. And then you have the transportation. Transportation is almost like a cut. You're either in or you're out. Like, they won't share data. And if they give it, it's like, what am I looking at now? It's like, oh, there's the ASN, there's the EDI, there's like, and Greek, like, I don't understand Greek, right? And then you got to create a mapping file for everything. And then but there's a fun part, right?
Yeah, definitely.
If it was all bed of roses or a path of roses, there shouldn't be no fun, right? You gotta have some excitement. And one of the things I always tell my team is, in our life, every day is like Christmas. You have a new present to open. There is a new problem every day. There's a new thing, there's a new challenge, because unless you're innovative and you're creative and you think outside the box and you keep challenging the norm and raise your benchmark, you're losing your value, right? Because things are changing so much that you got to keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. It's fun. And then the next part is once everything goes happy and we have the clean data, then it's optimizing and analytics, right? So it's like when you think about the model building, once you know it, it's not, it might take 20% of the time, but 80% of the time is making you, like, understanding the data and making sense out of that, right? How do you bring all these different things? You have vendor to DC and DC to DC and DC to store and store sales and purchase orders, and you got to bring everything together, and then you have the cost data that comes in all different buckets. So yeah, once that is done, then you do a POC. Like, hey, we have this model, we have simulated it, we have run it. It looks like it might be good for us. Okay, so what do? We do a POC. We make sure that you don't screw up anything else that is going on. Look at one item, look at one store, look at one region, and try to see how it looks. And then finally, if everything is good, you redesign, or the cycle goes again and again. But then that's how you innovate, right? That's how you get better. That's how you understand what are the opportunities within your supply chain and how do we get more fast, focused, and frugal. And again, what are your priorities? It's all about the customer, what the customer wants. Wow, even my pointer went to sleep. that is
trying to tell you something.
I know, right?
It is coffee.
Oh, there you go.
There is coffee.
Now we're playing this together.
Ah, there you go. Oh my God.
See, I'm doing it and you're doing it.
Okay. So this is a real example. So a company wanted to enter China, right? And they wanted to open stores and they wanted to open a warehouse. One of the 3PL that they spoke to, they said, hey, the best place to open a warehouse there is Hong Kong. So your manager comes to you and says, is that a good choice? If I wanted to open stores, where should I open? And is Hong Kong the best place? If it's not, what should it be? What do you guys do?
You have to do a market analysis.
Call you.
Look at the data.
I like that.
Understand where your customers are,
It's China.
but where in China?
Okay.
That's
How do you do that?
market analysis.
Okay.
You get data.
You got 5 hours to do this.
Oh, 5 hours?
Come on.
I'll ask them how they did it. I'll ask them to send me their thought process. We do that. If it's only 5 hours, I'm not gonna get farther than that.
That's your job, dude. You're gonna tell your manager, hey, you just give it to
No, I'll say why do you decide Hong Kong, and then walk me through your steps.
You just want to do our own homework to understand if Hong Kong is the right place. And even before that, you want to understand if you had to open stores, where should it be?
You start looking at population, start looking at money, where the money is in the country,
Google that.
where the population is. Yeah, I mean,
Uh-huh.
just using whatever data that's available there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, just using the data, whatever data you can get hold of.
Yeah. So for the stores, what I did, population, per capita income, GDP, and then try to think about, go outside the box, think about digital infrastructure. Like how many people have mobile phones? What are research available? The thing with population and per capita income, there might be areas that has a very low population but a very high per capita income. That doesn't mean that they would want to buy your product. It was interesting because then you do some more research to find, oh, this is a coal mining place, and people with that much money, they don't want to buy small items. They are looking for gold, yacht, luxury cars. Like they are not going to come to your store. So how do you think about those, right? Okay, fine. So you did all the analysis, and then you said you're going to have one store. You're going to open 5 stores based on whatever it is. Now you have to open a warehouse. Where should you open it? Close to what?
To ports.
To ports?
I gotta consider everything.
Like
transportation to each location, cost of, inventory in that area, or rent, I guess.
Rent? Yes.
How is it for suppliers to give you products? I mean, the
Where are
material.
your suppliers?
Yeah.
Understanding the base of demand, base of supply. Transportation infrastructure, does it have railways? Does it have airports? Does it have ports? Does it have people? Does it have money? And what are we trying? Like, you might think about a city, a densely populated city. You couldn't have a 20 feet trailers going through that. How do we think about that, right? So all of those come to. So it was interesting because when I did this, it came out of the 11 locations that I thought were good. Hong Kong was the last.
Oh my god.
Too expensive?
Yeah, one of the reasons. And then it's outside China. So you still have the U-turns and the regulations and everything. And Hong Kong is an island, right? It goes this way instead of this way. So the analysis shows Shanghai was the best place to open it. And they actually built a warehouse there. So
45 hours.
no, that is because the
5 hours? Where is it? Where is it going to be located? Where is it?
yeah, because the managers, the big guns of the company were going to China to talk to these guys, and they wanted to make sure that they had enough knowledge to challenge rather than just say, yeah, Hong Kong seems good. But not even about challenging as much as making sure that have we thought about some things that we didn't think about, right? So it doesn't have to do with optimization, it doesn't have to do with anything data, it's also being creative, innovating and thinking in life and trying to come up with something that is directionally right or wrong, but at least have a perspective and stand by, be accountable for what you're doing. Yeah, it was fun. So with that, questions, anything?
Just before we go there, just real quick.
Yeah.
When you look at I'm sorry. Now I screwed up the whole thing.
And I had nothing to do.
You're safe from that one. So when we go back to this slide, and we spoke about all the data needed, where do you see that this concept or this that we just heard could be useful?
How?
In all of them. In all of them. I mean, when you're deciding if you're going to launch a new product or if you're going to phase it out, data is going to justify if you should launch it or if you should phase it out. Right? On your forecast, the statistics will say this is going up, this is going down, this is selling more, this is selling less, you can put more money here or there. The prices are sensitive this way or that way. When you're going to produce and you're going to procure, data is going to tell you how much you need, when, and where. And finally, when you go to finance, right, data is going to tell you if you're going to reach the numbers or not reach the numbers, if you need to invest here more or there, and if you need to have a factory here or there, if you need a warehouse here or there. So without good data, without the analytics, this whole cycle here is probably not going to work as well as we would like. Okay? I just wanted to make this bridge back before opening the floor for questions.
Yeah, even when you think about the score model, when you think about enable, for me, that enable is information systems and data. Because you need that to join each of those building blocks there. Because without information, without data, again, it's the foundation, right?
So the center of the circle should say data.
You should.
The cycle is actually outside, not the center.
Yes. You had a question?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it. Alright, it's a kind of a personal thing that I'm struggling with, and I just want to get through. And I work in healthcare, so supply chain is not a product, but more like a service. I think it overlaps a lot. We talk about supply chain a lot of like product, but it's applicable to a lot of stuff we do. So I'm pretty much being asked by, and I work in a team which is kind of like I would say like the analytics, the mind of the executive board. So they're asking me stuff, for example, strategically, like, where do we expand our services and our specialties, and within Miami, we have different areas, and the next doctor hire, where do I put him in the 12 locations we have, and that kind of thing. So what I struggle with in terms of data is that I have all the data within the company, but I feel like I'm missing the the market data, which is where I'm gonna expand next. I don't know. I don't have that information. So the question is, I don't want to complicate I don't want you to do my work for me, but
no, I have some business cards.
You can go back to your consultant life.
What would be the first step you would take to find that market demand that there is within the different areas in Miami, for example, that I could tackle? I don't even know where I would start to gauge that demand with my own internal data, you know what I mean? So
you would look at what are the services that you're offering and how is it doing with the existing markets? Where is it looking up? Where is it looking down? And then layer that in with the demographics that you might have in Miami, because you have pockets of different demographics. You might have pockets of different per capita income, like Miami, Brickell, Coral Gables versus Fort Lauderdale or Weston. You have different incomes, you have different families. What are they looking for? Who are your competition?
Yeah.
Like it could just go crazy with that, right?
Yeah. Oh, but usually you have to just add into your comments, like you have to understand as well, because sometimes people ask you that, like give me the 8 volt, you know what you call that, the power 8 over there, because they just want your answer. But you have to, at least from my perspective, understand what is the value for them, or what they are looking for from the services that they provide. You need to understand which of those services have the most revenue, which one is the cost less, and then start looking in there of what they are looking for. Because sometimes what happens is you have a service that's a lot of revenue, but in reality you cannot apply it to everyone. You know, sometimes
Not
you
everyone
have
can
not
afford
that much revenue, but it doesn't cost that much, and you can obtain it to certain demographics. So that's what you have to understand. What are their main services? If it is producing how much? What are your costs?
Yeah.
Which one are the ones who cost the most? You know, because sometimes it's because of preference. Going to your point, Marco, like for me on the analytics side, between the 2 and the 3 is the more interactive and fighting field goes, because sometimes you get crazy because at least in the retailing, e-commerce, and understand non-e-commerce, and over the retailing and the stores and all that, people start asking for certain products, and you go, when you analyze the data and you have some type of understanding of the market, you go, why they are asking for that? Why they are asking you for this specific product is people are not buying it. But what happens is, when you go double click on it, you find out that in the store, that specific product is where they get most commission of it. So if you go to the sales guy, and if you ask their preferences, you know, he's gonna go always for where the money goes for.
Yeah,
And it's not
cleaning the
necessarily,
data is one of
it's
the
not
points that
necessarily
you
what
made.
is the customer wants.
Cleaning the data is art and science, and it's very complicated. I was thinking, as I was saying, that sometimes, let's say you want to have a curve of demand of a given store during the day, so you know the best time to supply and get deliveries to that store, so you never miss most of the sales. And then we look at the data, and you see that most of the sales are concentrated between 5 and 6 p.m. And so, okay, I'll deliver at 4. But then you talk to the guy at the store and say, no, we sell throughout the day. I just sit at the end of the day and I type everything in at that time. It happens more often than you believe. So, sometimes it's process, sometimes it's technology. If you can implement there a scanner that reads every time the product goes out, you fix that problem, right? But it is a combination of process, training, tools. It's not that simple. And in a case like yours, most likely you're going to have to look for relational data, like, where are the urban areas that are booming, that are growing. And even so, you have to be careful, because most likely your competition is looking at that area with the same bad intention of getting 50% of that market. And if 3 guys go there with 50% intention, it's 150. Somebody's going to be short. It happened in Brazil. I mean, I worked for Motorola in a time that everybody was going to Brazil to produce cell phones. Everybody wanted 30% of the market. When you get 4 people producing, you already have 100. You have overcapacity already, right? So it's art and science. You have to understand that where are the areas where you should have an eye on, because it's booming, it's growing, people are moving to that place. But you have to be in perspective that other people are probably doing the same thing as well.
Well, the other thing is, don't bite more than you can chew. So just take a small section and try to understand if you can understand how to get with that one part of the service, versus looking at the opening the floodgate, and now you have all the services, all the markets, all the you don't know what to make sense of.
A good source or good sources are the U.S. Census Bureau, because that they have a lot of data that is available for everyone, and you could extrapolate and even see population growth in terms of number of
Yeah, you can
percentages.
download those.
And the second one is the Department of Labor, because they divide data in metropolitan and statistical areas, and they even have tools that allow you to compare data with other locations. So and I work with some software, and at the end you realize that software ends up getting the data from the same place. So Esri and RIS, which are used mainly for real estate, they feed up from those. So if and in all honesty, US is probably one of the few countries where there is so much data, because in other countries, Colombia for example, you wouldn't find that data readily available, and if you find it, it might not even be reliable. So, I'm sure other countries, in Europe or other countries might also have reliable data, but at least we could talk that in the US, that's like a great benefit.
Where I would start is ask your manager, what are we trying to do? That's
fine.
Everyone
Everyone
wants
wants
to
to
make
make
money.
money. You have to
Everyone
understand
wants to, right?
you have to understand what they want. What
What is the company, a lot of in terms of money, services, what are they looking for always? Because sometimes it happens, you have a company have 20 services, but you see the big guys that will go to the main three, and the other, they must have it because they have to comply with something, but that's what you need to understand.
Thank you. We made it a little hard, didn't we?
No, but you know what? I guess don't sell yourself short, because at least on my experience for many years, I've been in the market. In the different companies and different fields. I always think that thanks myself that I ain't getting into engineering, because I have noticed that in other careers, and I don't want to pull minuses on other careers, but when you're an engineer, you always go like, I want to understand that, and you want to learn to double click and triple click. Some people, they just go with that number and
That's it.
Boom.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Depending on, and I think his question is correct. I mean, what's the real motivation behind it, right? It could be that you just want to expand to another city, or you just want to conquer the market and block everybody else, so you want to be fast. Actually, you just want to overbuild, and it's fine. You have money for that, because you actually are trying to prevent the competition from growing where you want to go. So it really depends on what the ultimate objective behind it.
Because you could just sell one service in multiple cities and be okay with that, because it's a top selling service. It's economical and people like it, versus having 20 services in multiple places. And so it's all taking a step back. Don't just dive into that, analyze, and then you might have a better perspective of how could we tackle the problem.
Just one more thing, actually, for him. I would, I'll also look into the model for, since you're talking about specialties, the model for the Japanese social. What? The Japanese social. They're big here. South Florida. See how they are. You don't see a building associates in that, right? And other cities, so just some benchmarks right there.
Enough information?
There will be.
Now it's over.
Next week, I
No, 5 hours.
5 hours, man.
All right. Good.
So for those that want to know a little more about S&OP, I sent a paper to Luis, and I'm going to ask him to share with
You can actually, I didn't know that, but you could order from Costco through Instructor without being a member of Costco. Okay. Convenience, right? So, and then competition is global. If you're going to go to a new country, you're going to go to a new market, you already have the local people there. You have the local stores there. How do you make sure, right? You always have. Think about any item that you see on the table in your life, and there will be some competition, because that's substitution, right? If you go to a store, unless you have the brand loyalty, if you don't find the item, you might just go and buy something else. you go for Dasani water, you don't have that, you'll go Aquafina or something else, but they have lost the sale. So, and it's on a global scale. So it's just like, some of the articles, and then Gartner usually has every year they talk about the top 25 companies having the best supply chains, and it's the players that you see on the slide has been there forever. Like the Apples and the McDonald's and the Amazons. Well, actually there is no Apple. Very interesting. Unilever, Walmart, Schneider, L'Oreal, BMW. It's all about innovation. It's about technology. So you have on one side you have the data, the other side you have the skills, the people, but then you need technology. Without technology, you're nothing, right? And that's always a big change with companies, because people have been in industries and companies for 25 years, 30 years, and they use the 8-ball, they have the gut feel of this is what we need to do. And when you try to challenge the norm, that's where the change management happens, right? Like, no. So it's always, but that's why I had the 8-ball, because at one point people used to shake the 8-ball and like, this is what we're going to do. Why?
Because I want to.
That's it. You got a dart. There you go. So one of the things is, how do you always challenge the norm? And you can only challenge the norm by actually looking at data, analyzing data, and justifying why you're doing or what you want to do with regards to the data. So talking about complexity, right? This is a simple example. We are talking about the vendors all over the world. And again, these are like real life experiences. You got vendors all over, you have distribution centers all over, and you might have customers all over. Imagine every customer who is walking inside a store, any part of the world, needs to have the product that they want in the specifications they like, otherwise you lost a sale. Isn't that exciting? And then you got, like, when you think about the flows, it's no longer like something that you would see in, even this one is a clean flow. It literally would look like a spaghetti. No lies. And you would just think about it, what the hell are we doing? Like, why are we doing what we are doing? But again, you wouldn't know that unless you actually take a holistic perspective and be able to see the supply chain end to end. Otherwise, you're just working in silos, there is no collaboration, and you're just like, I'm the manufacturer, I manufacture. I don't understand if I'm going to push my products, what's going to impact. I'm the distribution center, I get it, I push it down to the store. I'm the store manager, I get it, I try to sell it, if I don't sell it, well, what can I do, right? So unless there is collaboration, there is visibility, there is transparency in your supply chain, it's always going to be a problem. So it's almost like, what are we doing with all that? Right item, right place, right time, right quantity. If not, again, orchestra. If one instrument goes out of sync, the whole orchestra goes out of sync. So this one has got a lot of information. I'll try to see how I can talk about this. It's the same slide that we saw initially, where we spoke about like different kind of analytics. But then this is like, how do we think about this? How do we think about the evolution? You're talking about the past, you're talking about the present, you're talking about the future, and you're talking about human input to decision. So imagine doing a model using Excel and Access, right? You do your number crunching and you're prone to some error somewhere. As good as a person is with Excel and the formulas and shortcuts, you still have a very good chance that you might make one error, especially somewhere, right? And as we go up, if things are more stable, if you know your demand patterns, if you know your replenishment, if you know your order quantities, how much you need, why do you need people working on that? Why can't we automate some of those things, right? And then different tools. So when we think about descriptive, you have visualization, you have business intelligence, you have dashboarding. These are all the new buzzwords. There are so many applications that are available now, like Tableau, Domo, Alteryx, Pentaho, and they talk about data blending, they talk about visualization and dashboards. Like I can actually see how the supply chain is doing right on my phone, which is a good thing and a bad thing, because now your managers are also seeing that, and you get emails in the middle of the night, like, what is happening? But it's having that perspective, right? Having the empowerment to make a difference by using or showing or visualizing data, like which was never there. Now you can actually see, if I can pick an item at a store or a club, I should be able to see how much I have on hand at the store, how much is there at my distribution center, who's my vendor, how much is he manufacturing, who are my carriers, all this information, and people just get greedy, which is a good thing, right? And then you have the next part, which is the diagnostic and predictive. So you have machine learning, you have forecasting. So forecasting, again, it can be a classic forecasting, or it can be a machine learning forecasting. So univariate and multivariate, where you talk about, you're just looking at the history to predict the future, right? But on multivariate, what you're doing is you're adding causal factors. You're saying, hey, what might happen if my temperature goes up, like my sales of ice cream, temperature. So now you get data from external sources, IoT, Internet of Things. There is so much data available, it's crazy. You can go crazy, right? But how do we bring all those things? Like geopolitical things. How are things in Venezuela? How are things in some other country? What is my strike? What are the tariffs happening in China? Like all those things, you try to bring it and try to understand how that's going to impact things that you do. And then you have the optimization. So what is optimization? Everyone talks about optimization. So what do you guys think? What is optimization? Wake up.
A solution that if you create a little bit to one side, it's gonna be less value.
Okay. That is no wrong answer.
Maximizing revenue or minimizing cost.
Great. Anybody else?
The least cost solution to operate.
Yep.
Yes.
So it's like, how do we make the best use of the available resources, right? You can have, like I was talking about, constrained, unconstrained. If every manufacturer that we have could make whatever, in whatever quantities you needed, life would be better, right? But no. So how do you start layering that in to understand what my constraint optimization is? And optimization can be, like, believe it or not, we use it in our daily lives. A good example is the GPS, right? You're going through that, there is an accident. What does that do? It immediately reroutes you and says this way. It's optimizing your travel time, right? So anything that we do, we can think about real life examples of optimization. And then simulation. So what is simulation? Anybody?
Trying different scenarios with different variables to see what the optimal
Perfect. Yeah, perfect. A good example, flying a plane, right? You always have to go through a simulator before you actually sit on a plane. Right? Same thing is with supply chains. Because you're talking about millions of dollars, you're talking about people, and you're talking about processes, changing things. It's better to understand what might happen. But it can be used to your advantage to understand different what if scenarios to say, what would happen if I do this instead of that, right? And trust me, these are all things that happen every day in our lives. Especially once you start getting into these things. Yeah, I wouldn't know what to do if there wasn't there. So, and then you have people, right? When you think about the people, you need to have the right skill set. Technology. Now, this can get, again, a little out of hand because you're talking about hardware and you're talking about tools and applications. When you're thinking about hardware, think about, I'm sure you heard of big data, Hadoop and MapR, and relational databases and SQL servers, and yeah, because you need to have some place to put all the data, right? And so that's where those things come in. Tools and applications, you could do optimization with a simple Excel tool. You could use MS Excel, you could use GoldSeek or Simplex and do a simple linear regression, and you could do an optimization. But things will get more complex as we're thinking about multiple locations, multiple vendors, different duties and tariffs and transportation, LTL and TL and rail and truck, and it's the limit, the sky's the limit, right? It all depends. That's why one of the things in analytics or supply chain modeling is always, what are we trying to answer? Because it's very easy to slide into the quicksand and do something else and talk about exceptions where you deviated from what we were trying to answer in the first place. Process versus project. This is one of my, I always feel it's close to my heart because it's, you can't have, when there is a question that is asked of you, most of the question that comes to my desk needs to be answered yesterday, right? That's just the way it is because things are changing so dynamically. And if my team or myself, we take 6 months to answer a question, things have changed so much that people wouldn't even look at it. What are we talking about? 6 months? Hell no. So how do we think about things to move from a project base to a process base? So that if there is a question, 3 hours, you have an answer. And that's where the trade-off comes. What are you looking for? Direction or precision? You want like 32.00568 or 30. It's not going to change the answer. So it's always a trade-off that you have to make sure what are we trying to answer. If there is something that needs precision, sure. But if everyone spoke about control towers, everyone spoke about, like, you know, we need to build a control tower. What was that? It was just having a center of excellence somewhere that actually could orchestrate and look at your whole holistic supply chain and manage. It's one of the initial points that Marcos made. It's all about aligning demand and supply. If there is no alignment, there is some whack going on somewhere, right? And that's where that comes in. So network design, what are some of the things that we can do? To your point, minimizing cost or maximizing profit. New footprint. I want to enter a new country. I want to open new stores. I want to open new warehouses. I want to open new factories. I want to look for alternate sourcing. All of those can be done with network design and optimization. Inventory optimization. Hey, now I have my network. How much inventory should I hold? What are optimal policies? Like, is it a days of supply? Is it a weeks of supply? Is it a pay stock model? I can keep going on. Single or multi-echelon. Are you just talking about your warehouse to your store? Or are you talking about your vendor to your warehouse to your store? All those things. Transportation optimization. Hey, now I know how much inventory I need. I know how my network looks like. What is the best way to move it? Do I do rail? Do I do intermodal? Do I fly it? Do I use ocean? What is the best way? Simulation. Now that I have fixed, how would it work? Can I just run it and look at it and see, does it satisfy all my demand? All those things, so you use simulation. Demand analysis. Demand analysis can be just, we can spend a whole session just talking about demand analysis. You're talking about market basket analysis. Like, you're looking at every sale that is made at a store or a club and trying to understand what do customers buy? What is the demographic of the customers who buy anything? If they buy this product, do they usually buy this product? And how could we use that to our advantage to see how we need to sell or stock the stores to make sure that it's always there when they come up? What if? Cost, service, and capacity. When I think about the 3 main buckets, when you think about any analytics optimization that we do, it has to impact one of those: cost, service, and capacity. And all three, it's almost like a stool with three legs, right? Because if you impact one, you're going to get wobbly. So how do we make sure that we have a balance between those three? And then again, the list is endless. You're talking about forecasting, you're talking about replenishment, advanced planning, scheduling, order management, routing, packing, loading, everything. It all, and the good thing is there are so many opportunities within each of those. And the bad thing is there are so many opportunities within each of those, right? So how do we make sure that everything is holding hands? Because again, think about an orchestra. It's like the easiest example. So this is a real example that we did. Dorian, when it was coming in, they wanted to understand what happens if one of the ports is going to get impacted. What is the best way to move products so that we don't impact supply chain? So my team had to run alternate scenarios to say, if Miami went down, what is the next best place to go? If Savannah went down, what is the next place to go? Where are my vendors? How am I moving stuff? And how much is it going to impact? So, like, the green circle was anything within 450 miles, 900 miles. So how many days is it going to take just to get, again, it was not.
Both work in big companies. And what has been your experience of a company that has shared their data throughout the whole supply chain with their suppliers, distributors, and so forth? Everyone involved, all the players involved. Which one has been the one in your experience and in your experience that you have seen they have done this the right way? Like you mentioned, sometimes they don't communicate, but which one in your experience has been the company that you observed, that you acknowledge that they've done things the right way?
I will mention one that had the right intentions, not the right product, okay? Which was BlackBerry. Defunct BlackBerry. At a given point.
No, it's not dead. I have a BlackBerry.
No, they're coming back, but not with the same flair that they had. But they introduced at a given time a collaborative approach from factory to channels. Okay, so they were getting involved, the distributor, Brightstar in our case, the operators, and the retail chains. Yeah, so they were pretty much getting visibility of inventory throughout the chain and trying to optimize that inventory, but at the same time, and this is one thing that we explore in the course, that replenishment model can only go so far, because when you are in the manufacturing level, you are actually sometimes planning production in large scales, right? And sometimes the flexibility is just not there. And they had an issue there, which was they overbought production capacity. They outsourced production, okay? It was not their own factory, somebody else was manufacturing for them. So they over-dimensioned the forecasts, okay? They overbuilt. So in the end, what was supposed to be a pull supply chain based on demand became a push. They had too much inventory, they started to push inventory down and down and down. And when you do that, you devalue your product, you have to make promotions, you have to, lower prices, and the whole thing started derating. There were other strategic reasons why BlackBerry failed, but in terms of design, it was great. It worked beautifully for a while, but when they started noticing that they were not selling as much as they thought, the whole thing became a push, right? Distributor, get this much, and push this to the operator, and operator push this much to the stores, and there were the phones, and people were not buying them. In terms of design, it was beautiful, but for other reasons, it didn't work.
I think for this one, sharing information is great, because then your suppliers or vendors know that it's not about you or it's not about me, it's about us. we work together to make sure that we both have a win-win. And it doesn't have to do with your vendors. It's the same thing internally, right? Your different departments, your demand and your supply and your operators and your finance, it's the same concept. Like when everyone goes to a common goal, it's much easier to achieve it versus trying to put each other down and cutting corners. When we are open about our communication, we can say, hey, this works, this doesn't, let's come to a compromise. Because you know that I'm trying to sell your product. And you're making sure that I'm getting the product in time in the way I want it so that I can make you money. Right? It's all about that. Which is hard. No one wants to.